At exactly 2:30 a.m., the quiet sky over western Russia came alive with the low hum of engines, nearly 200 drones slicing through the night. Radar screens lit up in command centers as red dots spread like wildfire across the map. Within minutes, air raid sirens wailed across Bryansk, Kaluga, and Moscow oblasts. It wasn't just another cross-border attack. This was one of the largest drone strikes Russia had faced since the start of the war. According to Russia's defense ministry, air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 193 Ukrainian drones overnight. But eyewitnesses told a different story. They described flashes of light breaking the darkness, distant explosions shaking windows, and debris falling over rooftops. Around 34 drones were reportedly heading straight for Moscow, forcing the capital into a brief but tense standstill. By sunrise, chaos had been mapped across western Russia. 47 drones shot down over Bryansk, 42 over Kaluga, 40 near Moscow, and dozens more scattered across Tula, Oryol, and Kursk. Social media is filled with shaky videos of fireballs in the sky and the echo of explosions that carried for miles. Whether it was a defensive win or a warning shot, the night proved one thing: the war was no longer distant. Let me walk you through how it all unfolded. At 2:30 a.m., the silence over Russia's western border was broken. Not by explosive fireworks, but by a persistent hum. Over the Bryansk and Kaluga regions, radar screens began to flicker. At first, air defense operators logged one or two blips. By 2:33 a.m., the dots multiplied. From Bryansk to Kursk to Moscow Oblast, the sky was suddenly dotted with nearly 200 unmanned aerial vehicles. Russia's defense ministry would later claim 193 Ukrainian drones were intercepted or destroyed overnight. The first wave crossed the border without a sound. These weren't random drones. Intelligence later identified them as UJ-22 airborne and Beaver-type UAVs, both commonly used by Ukraine for deep strikes. They were fast, small, and built for long range, able to travel hundreds of kilometers at low altitude using preset GPS routes and terrain maps. They didn't fly high like traditional aircraft. Instead, they hugged the ground, gliding just above forests and river valleys. Their routes passed through Bryansk and Kursk oblasts, slipping through lowlands and narrow corridors where Russian radar coverage was weakest. Every turn, every altitude drop was calculated. By 2:36 a.m., a group of 34 drones broke away from the main formation and veered northeast toward Moscow. It wasn't a mistake. Analysts later said it was a decoy wave, meant to stretch Russian air defenses thin. The drones flew in tight, looping patterns, their radar signatures overlapping to look like a much larger swarm. Inside Russian monitoring stations, the first signs appeared on screens as faint flickers, then more followed. Within minutes, radar operators were watching dozens of signals blinking across Bryansk, Kaluga, Tula, and Kursk. Each one marked a drone moving toward an energy hub, a communications tower, or a fuel depot. Within 20 minutes, air raid sirens were echoing across towns and villages. At 2:50 a.m., a drone detonated near a bus in the Pogar district of Bryansk, killing the driver and wounding 5 passengers, as reported by the local governor. In Moscow Oblast, at 3:07 a.m., the mayor confirmed that drones targeted residential blocks, forcing the rapid mobilization of civil defense crews. Back at the Air Defense Command Hub, controllers spoke in clipped tones. Falcon 1, you've got a bogey at 090, clusters moving at 120 knots, altitude 150 meters. Interceptor missiles and surface-to-air batteries spun up. By 3:20 a.m., dozens of drones were exploding mid-air, sending fragments and debris across populated zones. Residents reported flashes, booms, and windows rattling. The attackers pressed on. At 3:35 a.m., smaller swarm drones, designed to be low, fast, and hard to detect, hit Tula Oblast, Kursk, and Oryol. According to the Defense Ministry, 32 drones were downed over Tula and 10 over Kursk. The aim: divide air defense attention and force resources away from Moscow's approaches. By 3:58 a.m., the strike tempo shifted. It was no longer simply waves of approaching drones, but a saturation effort, damage, distraction, and fear. Over Moscow's outskirts, flight control temporarily suspended departures at major airports. Residents in suburban towns filmed bursts of light and the sound of near-miss blasts. At 4:30 a.m., Moscow's command acknowledged that while the worst may have been intercepted, the night was not yet over. Some drones continued to drift, spiral out, or crash far from their launch points. But the shadow of the attack extended across hours. By 5 a.m., the sky had grown cold, pale, with approaching dawn. The physical damage was still being assessed. According to reports, at least one bus was crushed by debris, several windows were shattered, and there were multiple power outages in Moscow and Bryansk. News outlets estimated the number of drones heading toward the capital at over 30. The attack wasn't random. It moved in 3 deliberate phases: reconnaissance, strike, and delay. The first wave carried out reconnaissance. These were small, fast drones, barely the size of a motorcycle, flying ahead to test how Russia's air defense would react. They slipped past the radar perimeter, sending back real-time data and forcing Russian mobile units to switch on their tracking systems. The goal wasn't to destroy anything yet, but to expose where the defenses were hiding. Once the radar networks were lit up and the positions of mobile launchers were revealed, the second phase began. Heavier strike drones followed, programmed to hit logistics routes, fuel storage sites, and high-value infrastructure like power substations. Their paths were coordinated with the first wave's data, so they flew directly toward the weakest points now visible on radar. The third phase came quietly. A handful of slower drones circled back hours later, targeting repair crews and delaying recovery efforts. These weren't just attacks from the air, they were calculated moves in a larger strategy of exhaustion, forcing Russia to stay alert long after the first explosions had faded. Finally, the swarms of low-flying quad types loitered overhead, forcing civil watchers to stay alert, pulling resources thin. Analysts noted that using drones in this layered way decreases the point defense success rate, as radar operators must sort friend from foe and decide when to engage. Deep in the Bryansk region, at 6:10 a.m., local rescue teams still pumped water out of a flooded subway exit that had been hit by falling drone debris. Schools opened their gyms as shelters. Train schedules were disrupted for hours as airport runway lights were shut. The war had moved hundreds of kilometers behind the front lines. In Moscow Oblast by 7 a.m., social media clips showed fragments falling from the sky and residents filming streaks of light overhead. One woman said, "I thought it was fireworks at first, then the ground shook and the sky echoed." The psychological dimension of the strike was clear. This wasn't only about damage, it was about sleep lost, nerves fraying, and the sense that nowhere was safe. By 8:15 a.m., political and military leadership were briefing each other. The Russian Defense Ministry's Telegram account posted the official tally: 193 Ukrainian drones neutralized, major focus on Moscow-bound craft. That statement sparked rapidly trending commentary. Some praised the air defense systems, others asked how so many drones were able to launch. Meanwhile, intelligence circles in Ukraine quietly described the operation as deep strike logistics disruption, aimed at stretching Russian defensive and civil systems. As day broke, the skies cleared, but the tension didn't. The attack showed what modern drone warfare looks like: mass numbers, multiple entry points, layered assaults, and a mix of kinetic and psychological effects. Moscow's suburbs, long considered safe from direct threats, found themselves buzzing with alarms at 3 a.m. The war's geography had changed. With the body of events now laid out, it's clear that the night was more than a headline figure of 193 downed drones. It was a test of defenses, resolve, and response time. From reconnaissance drones mapping the launch corridors days earlier, to loitering strike vehicles hitting transit hubs, to small quad swarms circling backup units, every piece fit a strategy. By 9 a.m., the morning after the strike, smoke still hung over parts of Bryansk and Kaluga. Firefighters were hosing down what was left of residential blocks, while engineers picked through broken concrete near power substations. Roads were partially closed as police collected drone fragments, some still warm from impact. At 9:20 a.m., Russia's defense ministry released its official statement: 193 drones destroyed. No major casualties. But inside the regions, the picture looked different. Local telegram channels told of shattered windows, blackouts, and traffic chaos. In Bryansk, emergency teams counted more than a dozen injuries from debris and falling glass. Around 10 a.m., Moscow city officials began restoring power in outer districts. Videos from Tula and Oriol showed residents sweeping up twisted metal parts. A teacher from Kaluga posted that school classes were moved online until further notice. It wasn't just the physical wreckage, it was the disruption of routine, the sense that nights could no longer be trusted. By 11:30 a.m., Western and Ukrainian media were already analyzing satellite images. Military analysts noted the attack's structure, a multi-vector swarm, targeting both military and civilian zones to stretch Russian defenses thin. Each region hit represented a step deeper into the heart of Russia's infrastructure network: rail, energy, and communication. At 12:15 p.m., Russian bloggers loyal to the Kremlin began circulating footage of the interceptions, calling it the largest coordinated drone attack in months. They framed it as a defensive success. But between those posts, were quieter clips: farmers standing beside cratered fields, a burnt bus in Bryansk, a child pointing at a hole in their roof. By 1 p.m., repair crews worked under tight deadlines to clear highways. Reports emerged that debris had damaged portions of fiber optic cables near Orenburg. Officials said no loss of national connectivity, but call centers were flooded with complaints of slow internet and power surges. At 2:30 p.m., satellite operators confirmed that several Ukrainian drones used advanced flight paths. They zigzagged below radar and used pre-programmed navigation. Some Western analysts called it a soft demonstration of how Ukraine's drone technology had evolved beyond improvised craft to full military coordination. Meanwhile, by 4 p.m., the psychological wave hit. Moscow residents spoke of sleepless nights and a low-frequency hum that lingered in their heads. Mental health hotlines in affected oblasts saw a spike in calls. The attack had not only tested radar, it had tested nerves. At 6 p.m., reconstruction began. Damaged bus routes reopened. Lights flickered back in Kaluga, and the Russian Defense Ministry reported that airspace over the central district has been fully stabilized. But stabilized didn't mean calm. By sunset, the question wasn't how much damage was done, but how many more nights like this could come. By 7:30 p.m., both sides were watching each other again. Satellites scanning, radars humming. The night that started with quiet hums and blinking dots had redrawn another invisible line in the war. So, when officials later called it just another drone night, those who lived through it knew better. It wasn't just another night, it was a reminder that, in this war, the front lines don't sleep anymore. By 8 p.m., calm returned, at least on the surface. Streetlights flickered on across Moscow and Bryansk, as if trying to erase what the night had written in fire. But for millions, that low drone hum still echoed in their heads. Every light in the sky, every passing sound, carried a question no one wanted to ask out loud. When will it happen again? That's the thing about modern warfare. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it buzzes quietly over rooftops, slipping through radar and silence alike. The attack had ended, but its message stayed clear. Distance no longer means safety. As the world scrolled through clips and headlines, engineers, soldiers, and civilians were already resetting for the next round. Because in this war, nightfall isn't a pause. It's the next beginning. Let me leave you with this. The sky may look peaceful tonight, but peace here is only a few seconds wide. If you want to keep following how the war is changing shape, attack by attack, drone by drone, stay tuned, subscribe, share, and keep watching with us because the story of these skies is far from over.